Page 3, we're going to talk about Pearson's correlation coefficient. On page 550, I copy and pasted a section of the page here. It gives you the formula for Pearson's correlation coefficient, which is quite a mess here. This doesn't mean much to you right now. Maybe what you're going to recognize are the sigmas. The sigmas we learned in the sequences and series chapter, where we summed up a sequence of numbers. Okay, so basically the Pearson's correlation coefficient is calculated from your data set. So all the little points we saw in the previous page, where we have a bunch of ordered pairs like this one and like this one, except they're real numbers, you take all those and you find differences between the two, square them, etc., and then you use that to calculate the R value. And the R value is a number which ranges from -1 to +1. Okay? So it's kind of like, rate something between 0 and 10. And then you say, oh, I think it's a 8 or something like that, right? So in this case, Pearson's correlation coefficient, instead of going from 0 to 10, it goes from 0 to 1. So like, if something is really correlated, Pearson would say that it's a 1. And if it's not correlated, he would say it's a 0. So what's the -1 for? Well, remember positive and negative correlation. So once you figure out how well it's correlated between 0 and 1, if it's a positive correlation, it's going to be positive. And then if it's a negative correlation, you put a negative sign in front of it. That's all that means. Okay? But basically, the least correlated value is not -1. The least correlated value is 0, and that's a little bit confusing. Okay? Anything close to 0, no correlation. 1 or -1, very correlated. Just +1 means positive correlation. -1 means negative correlation, which just means the direction it's pointing. Is it pointing down, which is negative, or is it pointing up, which is positive? Okay. X bar and Y bar, which appear in the formula here, 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 and here, are mean values or average values of all the x's and all the y's that you have from your complete data set. Okay? X bar and Y bar is called like the mean point because it is the coordinate of a point which is not in the distribution, but if you average all the points together, X bar comma Y bar would be the middle point in terms of the average. Okay? All right. So here we're going to get values from page 550 of the book, where it explains to us how we translate different values of R to be words like positive strong, positive moderate, positive weak. Okay? I just noticed that I had all these negative instead of positive. I went positive on the left, negative on the right. So as I told you before, when R is +1 exactly, then that is a perfect correlation in the positive direction. And there is the opposite, which is perfect correlation in the negative direction, which would just be R equals -1. We already talked about that too. No correlation, now that would be something very close to 0. It wouldn't necessarily have to be 0, and the book defines it as 0, between 0 and 0.1 for positive, and then for negative, negative 0.1 to 0. Okay? And then between here, strong, moderate, weak, the book defines different ranges here. I'm just going to write them down because, they're kind of arbitrary, or like, the book defines something, or the IB course defines something. But of course, these words, strong, moderate, very strong, they are vague words. So, depending on which book you look at or which course you take, you're going to see like different things here. So you may, have to memorize these for the exam, the IB exam, but this is something that there's no problem if you forget immediately afterwards, because go to a different school or take a different course and it's going to be different. Okay, you're just going to have a general idea of it. So over here on the negative side, you're going to have all the same numbers, but instead of, positive 0.95 to 1, you're going to have negative 1 or negative 0.95, for example. And then you have negative 0.95 or, and then you're going to have 0.87, negative 0.87, right? And then you're going to have negative 0.87 or you're going to have 0.5. And then here you have negative, this is negative 0.5. Do you see how this goes? It's just the opposite of the other side. It's negative 0.1. Alright? Alright. This is, check out a couple of examples on page 552. Okay, and on 552, they are showing you how to do a calculation of the R value using the pairs, the coordinate pairs you're given. Okay, and we're going to do that in a little bit. This is going to be the most tedious thing you've done in this unit. Okay. Match each scalar diagram with the correct value of R. So, let's see. I hope they're going to be nice to us here and not give us anything really crazy. Let's start with that one. It says no correlation. Which one has no correlation? I would say D, right? This one looks like perfectly positive correlation, which would be 0 or positive 1. So I would say A, okay? And then, let's see, what about this one? Negative 1. So this is the perfectly positive or perfectly negative correlation, which would be E. Okay. And then this looks like a positive moderate correlation. So that would correspond to this one, 0.6, right? And then last of all, this is the only one that's left, but that's obviously a negative correlation. It's going down, moderate, negative 0.7. That makes sense. So we're fine there. Okay, and that's it for this page. I'm going to separate the next page out into another video. So see you then.